with, I don't know if he's known in Germany, but in England, in Britain, he's probably the best known humanistic psychologist. His name's John Rowan. And he's written some wonderful books. I mean, if you're interested in humanistic psychology, he's a great guy to read. He wrote a wonderful book called Ordinary Ecstasy. And he took it into his head to write an article in a transpersonal psychology magazine in England attacking this kind of non-duality, naming names.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
Parsons.
That's good for business.
Leo Hartung, Richard Sylvester, Nisargadatta. I mean, you know, it's good company. Great,
neat,
wonderful. What's the chap in Holland? Kershaw, Jan Kershaw, another one. He named and he denounced us all as having a naive and primitive view of child psychology. He managed to make us sound as if we had a naive and childish view of child psychology by completely misrepresenting what we were saying, which is kind of interesting. And anyway, and having do-lallied around about this and thinking about it and talked to Tony about it and gave him a copy of it and thought, this needs an answer because it's in print. Oh no, I can't be asked. So this went on for about 6 months, and then I thought, oh well, I might as well. So I wrote an answer to it, which then got published in the same magazine. I should think probably in the whole of Britain there are up to maybe 7 people who might be interested in what is actually a rather arcane and obtuse and obscure discussion. You know what they say about quantum physics? I can't remember who it was said this. You know that there are only 2 people who understand quantum physics. You know, me and you, and I'm not sure about you. And then somebody else said, if you think you understand quantum physics, you don't understand quantum physics. And I feel that's about this very obscure argument about what we mean by non-separation, because that's what it was really about, what we mean about non-separation. So there may be 7 people in the world who are interested in this argument, of whom maybe 2 might understand it. To be honest, I'm not even sure if I understand it myself, and I wrote the reply. But the point I'm working round to at some great length is that he seemed to be, I would choose my words carefully, he seemed to be, because I have to allow the possibility that I was misinterpreting what he was saying. He seemed to be very much of the persuasion, very popular persuasion, that enlightenment is evolutionary. You know, the kind. I mean, I know this chap is to a certain extent, or was to a certain extent, into Ken Wilber. So no surprise there that he's into the idea of evolutionary enlightenment. You know, I mean, I think Andrew Cohen's another one, isn't he? Who's into the idea of evolutionary enlightenment. And towards the end of this article, he was talking about how the enlightenment of today is different to the enlightenment of the Buddha's time, because there's been evolution. I mean, because the brain has evolved, or the mind has evolved, or consciousness has evolved. So that, in a way, what he seemed to be saying is that the enlightenment of today is superior to the enlightenment of the Buddha's time. Well, that's very good news for us today, of course. Oh, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Except I strongly believe it's complete baloney. I'll just say that again, make sure we get it on camera.
Very clear.
That is complete baloney. Let's use the word enlightenment as he does. Enlightenment doesn't evolve. How could enlightenment evolve? How could the seeing that there is no person evolve? I mean, that's either seen or it isn't. Let me refer, as I often do, to dear Nathan Gill. Nathan Gill was cycling down a lane in Kent, and then there was no Nathan Gill cycling down a lane in Kent. There was just cycling down a lane in Kent. That's liberation. How could that evolve? If there's no Nathan Gill cycling down a country lane in Kent, how could that become a better or a deeper or a changed no Nathan Gill cycling down a country lane in Kent? It's absurd. I am willing to concede that there were probably no bicycles in the Buddha's time. But I do not feel that is, a fundamental part of what we're talking about here.
Let alone lanes in Kent.
Let alone lanes in Kent. There were probably wolves in forests in Kent. It's just crazy. It's the craziness of the mind. I'm tempted to invent, would it be an invention if I coined the phrase the Enlightenment ego? I don't know. I'm going to claim that for now until I'm proved wrong. It's the craziness of the Enlightenment ego. What may happen 2,500 years ago, pretending that there is time, the Buddha saw there was no one. And today, pretending there's such a thing as today, maybe Bill, whoever Bill is, sees that there is no one. And maybe today we make up more complicated, more complex, and more difficult to understand stories about that. Maybe we do, maybe we don't, I don't know. I mean, modern psychology has got pretty sophisticated, but I think Buddhist psychology was pretty sophisticated as well. So that's what happens. No one sees that there is nothing, and then the mind makes up more and more and more complicated stories about it, and then pats itself on the head for being so clever. I have absolutely no idea what that had to do with what somebody said. Something set that off. Oh, it was about the brain, wasn't it? Yeah, it was about the brain. Mathieu, I know it's tea time, but Mathieu Richard, I mean, that might have been a projection. I just felt you were looking at me with that, it's tea time, Richard, look on your face. Mathieu Ricard, who is said to be the happiest man in the world, the French Tibetan monk, who's been tested in the laboratory in Seattle where they can measure your happiness through your brainwaves. He's said to be the happiest man in the world. It's great. It's wonderful, Happiness has nothing to do with liberation. Except that happiness, like everything else, is included in liberation. Happiness is a state, and may well depend on brain chemistry. Almost certainly does.
One would think so, yes.
So, you want to be happy, do the sorts of things that might develop happiness. It's great. Nothing to do with liberation. Because happiness is a state, and liberation is not a state. Maybe the amount of happiness that humans can experience has evolved over the last 2,500 years. I have no idea. I don't know why that should be the case, but maybe it is the case. Maybe the happiness centre in the brain is gradually growing bigger. I don't know. But it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, because what we're talking about is not a state. And it must be tea time.
Can have a shorter one.
Oh no.
No?
I feel people might have issues if we cut down on the tea. We'll take however long you think we should take.